in Southall, Middlesex, which is West London now. I was only 9 when World War broke out. My earliest memory actually is sitting on the armchair of my father's armchair, hearing that war was declared and seeing the panic in the parents' faces. They'd obviously been through the First World War. My father had had a rough war, being prisoner and being taken prisoner and being wounded. And obviously they knew what was going to happen, or they thought what was going to happen. Shortly after that, the siren went. I remember going down the garden path with the next door neighbours. Whether it was a false alarm or not, I don't know, but nothing happened then. But I do remember previously having to go to be fitted for gas masks, and the neighbours getting together to dig the hole ready for the Anderson shelter at the bottom of the garden. We spent a lot of time in that Anderson shelter over the next few years. The other early memory really was when the first buzz bomb went over. My next door neighbour was up in the bedroom looking out, talking to us in the garden, and she looked up and she said, "There's a funny plane coming." And then of course the engine cut out and we realised it was the first buzz bomb, which landed in one of the streets not very far from where we were. We'd gone down to the Anderson shelter once it cut out, obviously. I wanted to go back for the dog, but my mother wouldn't let me. She threw me down the shelter, if you like, because obviously, you know, it was a panic situation. But we were all right. We had the windows blown out, but that was about all. We escaped very well. Obviously, at 9, you don't really know what's going to happen. You just take everything as it comes. I was at school most of the time. The school for quite a long time was only half a day because one of the other schools had been bombed out and we shared premises with them. We did half a day and they had the other half. I don't remember much more about school really, so quite a lot of that time was down in the shelters because we had quite a lot of activity, so being West London and a lot of factories around that way. Obviously it was quite a good target. But I don't remember much more about, as I say, we were very fortunate. Apart from having the windows blown out, I don't think we had any real damage at all. But every night we used to go down to the air raid shelter. And on one occasion my mother had had an accident. She'd caught her fingers in the sash cord, the window. She went to open the window and trapped her fingers. So a neighbour had taken her to hospital and I was in on my own, obviously school holidays, and the siren went. And I just picked up the case, which one always took down, with all the birth certificates and insurance papers, and grabbed the case and the dog and went down the shelter. When they came back from the hospital, of course I was all right. One of those things. I suppose I must have been about 10 at the time. You just take it in your stride. I remember they had built a nursery down in the recreation ground, which was at the bottom of the road, and because they opened that early in the morning till late in the afternoon, so that the parents or the mothers could go out to work. And when I was about 14, I suppose, I went and worked down in the nursery during school holidays and after school. That was my war work. But it sounds an early age, 14, but of course most people had left school at 14, and I was at a grammar school, so I didn't leave till 16. By then, of course, the war was over. I was 15 when the war was finished, and things got back to normal. Not really to normal, but at least we didn't have to spend the night down in the shelter. I don't remember much more really. We didn't have any major incidents. My father was working in the de Havilland factory. His trade actually was French polishing, but during the war he was working on camouflage in the aircraft. Not very much like French polishing, but to do with paints and things, I suppose. That was his world work.
So your father was painting the exterior of the aircraft?
Yeah, the camouflage of the aircraft, yeah. Yes.
You mentioned your father being in the First World War,
yes,
and the fact that he was imprisoned. Where was he imprisoned?
Well, he was in Germany, but I couldn't tell which prison camp he was in. I know he was on the Somme, and he obviously got captured on the Somme. I mean, he had been wounded prior to that and been sent home, patched up and sent back again. So he'd had a rough war, really. Well, I haven't got it because my eldest son's got it. He keeps all the bits and pieces. There is just a little note from him, from the Somme, that just, on a scrap of paper, that just said, "I am well, Somme," and that was it. So, and shortly after that, obviously, he was taken prisoner. Obviously, when the war was declared, I wouldn't say a panic, that's not the right word, but obviously their memories went back to what they'd gone through previously, and you know, it was whereas at 9, you don't know, do you? You don't. You've no recollection of anything that's happened before, and you've no idea what's likely to happen in the future, really.